You know, you hear it on the news all the time. It moves markets, it sways elections, it shapes the policies that affect literally all of our lives. It's just a single number, but it holds this immense power over the entire global economy. It's often treated like the ultimate scorecard for a nation's success. So let's take a closer look at this one powerful number.
And that number, of course, is gross domestic product, or as everyone calls it, GDP. But what is it really? How is it even calculated? And more importantly, how in the world did this one statistic become the king of all economic indicators?
So in this explainer, we're going to break down the world's most powerful number. We're going to start with what it is, then we'll peek under the hood at how it's actually made. After that, we'll get into its really surprising history, and finally, we'll dig into its flaws and the search for something, well, something better.
Okay, so first things first, let's get a really clear, simple handle on this term we hear thrown around constantly.
So here's the official textbook definition. GDP is the market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given time period. Now, that might sound a little dry, but trust me, every single word in that definition is important. So let's break it down piece by piece.
Let's look at the four key ingredients. First up, market value. This just means we use prices to add everything up. It's how you can add an iPhone and a haircut into one number. Second, and this is super important, it only counts final goods. Think of it like this. GDP counts the car you buy, but it doesn't count the steel and tires Ford bought to build it. Why? Because that would be counting the same value twice. Third, within a country. This means it measures everything produced on a nation's soil, even if it's, say, a German-owned factory in the US. And finally, it's all measured over a specific time, usually every 3 months or every year, so we can see if the economy is growing or shrinking.
So how on earth do economists actually add all of this up? I mean, their single biggest challenge is avoiding that double counting problem we just talked about.
And this is how they solve it. It's actually pretty clever. It's called the value-added method. Instead of just adding up prices at every stage, they only track the new value created at each step. So the farmer, they create $1 of value, growing the cotton. The mill turns that cotton into cloth, adding another $4 of value. The manufacturer makes the shirt, adding 7 more. And finally, the retail store gets it to you, adding the last $8 of value. So you add up all that new value, and what do you get? $20, exactly the price of the final shirt. Nothing counted twice.
Now there's another way to get to the same number. You just add up all the spending in the economy. This is probably the most famous formula in all of economics. You've got C for consumption, that's all of us buying groceries and gadgets. Then I for investment, which is businesses spending on new factories and stuff. G is for government spending, on roads and schools. And finally, net exports, what we sell to other countries minus what we buy from them. You add all that up, and bingo, you get GDP.
Okay, so how did this one specific calculation become the absolute king of economic metrics? Well, its rise to the top wasn't exactly planned. It was basically forged in the crises of the 20th century.
You have to remember, before the 1930s, governments were pretty much flying blind. They didn't have a good grip on the economy. GDP was actually invented for a simple reason, to figure out just how devastating the Great Depression really was. Then, in World War II, it was retooled to calculate exactly how much stuff the economy could produce for the war effort. After the war, this crisis management tool went global. Big institutions like the World Bank and the IMF made it the gold standard. If a country wanted a loan, you bet they had to measure their GDP. And that's how a tool designed for wartime production became the universal benchmark for peacetime progress.
But this is where the story takes a really critical turn, because a tool that's designed to measure wartime production, well, it might not be the best tool to measure a country's well-being, and that's where we start to see the cracks in GDP's crown. This right here is the single most important thing to understand about GDP. It was never, ever designed to measure what we often think it does. Its creators weren't trying to figure out if people were happy or if society was progressing. They were trying to measure production capacity for a war. Plain and simple, it's a tool being used for a job it was never built to do.
And this leads to some results that are, frankly, bizarre. GDP has these huge blind spots. It counts things that don't actually make our lives better. A hurricane causes billions in damage. All the rebuilding makes GDP go up. A country builds more prisons. GDP goes up. Meanwhile, it completely ignores some of the most valuable things in our society. All the unpaid work done at home, caring for kids, cooking, cleaning, is valued at exactly 0. Volunteering? 0. The value of clean air or a forest that's still standing? 0. In a way, GDP is like a calculator that only knows how to add. It has no idea how to subtract.
And hey, if you think the rules for GDP are set in stone, get this. Back in 1987, Italy's economy appeared to grow by almost 20% overnight. How? They just decided to start including estimates of their black market in the official numbers. This moment, which they called il sorpasso, or the overtaking, proved that what we measure is a choice. It's not some law of nature.
So, all of this leads us to the really big question. If GDP is such a flawed ruler, what are the alternatives? Is there a better scorecard for progress out there?
Well, the good news is people are definitely working on this. You've got things like the Human Development Index, which doesn't just look at money, it also factors in how long people live and how educated they are. Then there's the Genuine Progress Indicator, which is even more radical. It starts with GDP, but then it subtracts the costs of things like pollution and crime, and it adds the value of things like volunteering. Other new ideas like gross domestic well-being try to skip measuring production altogether and focus directly on what actually makes life good for people. So the next time you see a headline celebrating a big jump in GDP, it's worth taking a second to pause. A bigger economy doesn't automatically mean a better society, because a number doesn't just measure the world, it actually shapes what we value. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to ask if this one powerful number is really answering the right questions about the kind of future we want to build.